Hi, welcome to Board Gems. In this video series, I like to introduce older board games and talk about whether I think they're still gems or not. When you've played as many games as I have, you really try to seek out unique experiences. You know, another cube pusher, another resource conversion game, another drafting, another worker placement. Come on, there must be something else out there. I feel like modern games are in a little bit of a rut right now. Still some amazing games that come out, but if you want unique games, you often have to look backwards. Now there are conventions to hobby games. And back before there were conventions, and designers were trying all sorts of different things. So let's talk about a unique game that's gone by a number of different names and has been around in some form or another since the 70s. Some names the game has gone by are Sigmaphile, Agent, Casablanca is one. I almost said Casanova. Casablanca. There's a German one that I think is still current that you can get in the German market, which is about the Holy Grail or something. But in the English world, we know it as Conspiracy. This edition, which came out in the 80s from Milton Bradley, and this one came out in 2019. A restoration is from Restoration Games. It's an updated version of this old classic. It is for 3 or 4 players, ages 10 and up, which I agree with. It's a subtle, thoughtful game. I'm not sure kids would really enjoy it all that much. And this original one would have taken about 90 minutes, I think. But this one, the box says 30 to 60. The experience can be quite variable, at least in the original rules, and Restoration added an alternate winning condition that guaranteed the game wouldn't go too long. Players represent spy agencies or national governments, and they're trying to get a briefcase that's in the middle of the board. It's currently in Vienna. You want to bring that briefcase into your corner of the board, but you don't have any agents yourself that can go out and get it. Instead, there are free agents floating around the board, and any player can move any agent and can take the briefcase with them if they happen to be in the same city. The catch is that during the game, players are secretly giving money to these agents, assigning the money away. Players start with a certain amount of money, and on their turn, they can give money to an agent, and all that is recorded secretly. But what that means is that when a player asks an agent to do a thing, the other players have a chance to challenge. And if the challenger has given more money to that agent, has more goodwill with that agent, the agent won't do it. The agents are easygoing. They'll do whatever any player says, regardless of whether the player gave them any money. But if there's ever a conflict, one player wants agent to do something, another player wants the agent to not do that thing, the agent will listen to whoever gave them the most money. So a big part of the game is observing the other players, getting a sense of where they have their money, paying attention, but also there's opportunity for bluffing as well. Let me show you how it plays. I'll show you this edition. Keep in mind there's one standard rule which I present as optional because it wasn't in the original, but I'll introduce it to you anyway. Then afterwards, let's talk about whether it's still a gem today. To set up the game, place the board on the table between the players, ideally with one corner of the board close to one player. These are the player headquarters. So I'll set it up as if you were playing Algiers. So we'll get the Algiers shield. You can see it has a symbol that matches and the picture that matches the screen. It's a little bit hard to teach this with the screen in the way. So just pretend this screen is blocking other players' view, but I still want to be able to see it so I can teach you. Each player gets one of these personal player boards that show the 6 agents as well as Dr. Solomon. So you're going to put that behind your screen, and you are going to take 30 gold coins, gold sovereigns. I'm not going to count them out. But anyway, they're going to go on your reserve right here. Make sure none are on these 7 spaces, but they're above. Each player will also get one restricted marker, which can hang on the screen. But for now, just put it to the side. If you're playing with Dr. Solomon, you're going to take the Dr. Solomon die and place it on the 20 or the 15 based on number of players. The facing doesn't matter. Determine the start player. The Dr. Solomon pawn would go to their right. So you picture that everybody takes one turn in clockwise order, and then it's Dr. Solomon, and they will get a turn. The briefcase. This doesn't just have a MacGuffin, okay? This has the most important MacGuffin in the world. And that's going to go in Vienna. 6 agents. As randomly as you can, because at this point it doesn't matter who starts where, each of these agents will go on one of the spaces showing a little silhouette here. Each of these agents has one board, one little tile here. You're going to mix these up, give each player one, which they will look at secretly, and then, of their 30 gold sovereigns, place 3 on the matching agent. So each player will start with 3 coins on a different agent. And then during this setup phase, you're going to be taking 1 gold coin and placing them on each of 2 different agents. Not the one that you drew previously, that you already put 3, but you're going to put 1 each on 2 different agents. So each player will start with 3 coins on one agent and 1 coin on 2 other agents. Of course, you don't know what that does yet. So let me explain the concept of the game. The goal of the game is to get the briefcase into your headquarters via these routes, these cities. You do not have any of your own agents on the board. Instead, there are these 6 free agents, and all the players can move any of the agents. Agents can move the briefcase. If you are able to move an agent with a briefcase from an adjacent location into your headquarters, you win the game. They're free agents. They will do the bidding, they will follow the orders of any player. However, if there is ever a conflict, if one player wants to do something with an agent and another player doesn't want that agent to do that action, then the agent will do the bidding of the player who had already given them the most money. So over the course of the game, you'll be sending money to these agents, and you'll be recording that by moving gold sovereigns from your reserve onto those agents. And all players do that secretly. So you may have 3 coins on Vagabond, but I don't know that. And you don't know how much I have. I could have none, I could have 1, I could have 5. We don't know until there is a challenge of an action. On your turn, you can either give an order to an agent, or you can sort of pass and pay off an agent. If you pay off an agent, you declare it out loud. Your turn comes, you say, I'm going to pay off an agent. You're going to pick one of these agents, and if you're playing with Dr. Solomon, you can include Dr. Solomon. I'm going to talk about Dr. Solomon at the end because I don't personally play with Dr. Solomon. The game works fine without Dr. Solomon. It just sometimes can run a little long. So forget Dr. Solomon for now, I'll explain him at the end. When you make a payoff to an agent, you secretly, behind your screen, pick one agent and move any number of coins to the picture of that agent. And that number can be 0. You don't have to move any coins. Players know you're making a payoff to an agent, but they don't know which agent and they don't know how much money. Important to note, once a coin is assigned to an agent, that coin can never be moved again. These payoffs are permanent. You have given 3 coins to Vagabond. You no longer have access to these coins. You cannot move these around. What you can do is assign more coins to more agents. You can send more coins to Vagabond or send coins to different agents. But on your turn, if you make a payoff, 1 agent and any number of coins to that agent, including 0. Or you can give an order to an agent, and usually the order will be to move an agent. You will declare this out loud. You will declare the agent and the location you're moving them to. All the agents have names, and an agent can move to any adjacent city via these routes here, these strings, or if they're on a space with a train ticket, they can move to any other space with a train ticket. So you can say magician to Tunis, or you can say magician to Warsaw. Multiple agents can be in the same city. That's completely fine. If the briefcase is in the same city as the agent you're moving, you don't have to declare that the agent is taking the briefcase with them. So let's say I say magician to Tunis. That's my proposed move. Every player in clockwise order then has an opportunity to challenge that. If nobody challenges, then the move goes through. I would then have to move magician to the location that I stated, and then I may move the briefcase with them if they're in that city. There can be multiple agents in a city. In this sort of situation, no agent has the briefcase. They're all in the same location, and any agent moving out of that city can take the briefcase with them. So if I was to say magician to Tunis, and that goes through, I would move the agent, and then I may move the briefcase, regardless of the fact that there's another agent there. But I don't have to. I could just move the agent. But players have the opportunity to challenge that, and we go in clockwise order. So in clockwise order, every player has an opportunity to challenge. I wouldn't actually move the magician yet. I would just declare magician to Tunis. And then the next player in clockwise order may challenge. They just say challenge. At this point now, we have to figure out who has paid the most money to magician, and also how much they're willing to reveal. Because remember, this is all secret information. In order to win a challenge, you have to reveal information about the payoff you've already made that agent. And maybe you don't want to reveal how much money you've given an agent, especially because agents can be assassinated, which I'll explain later. This part, the challenge, when it plays out, it sounds like an auction. The challenger begins by declaring some amount of money that they have already given that agent. This is important because it sounds like an auction, but you're not auctioning how much money you're going to give that agent. You're simply declaring how much money you've already given that agent before this turn. So the challenger may start. They can declare any number that they have paid to that agent, 1 up to the amount of money that they have given. They may not want to start with the full amount. If they've given 4 coins to magician, they may not want to start at 4, because that gives other players information. But they may start with 1. The active player, the current player, the player whose move is being challenged, then must respond with a number greater than that. But again, an amount that they have already given that agent. They are not allowed to lie. If they have more coins given to that agent than what the player, the challenger, has said, then they can respond with a larger number. They might respond with 2. Again, assuming they have at least 2 coins on there. They can go back and forth, 3, 4, as long as they're not lying about the money that is currently sitting on that agent's picture. But again, they may not want to reveal how much money is on there, so they may choose to drop out. Of course, they can also exaggerate a bit. Maybe the person being challenged said 2, and the challenger has 2. They can't go higher than 2. But again, they don't have to reveal that. They could go, well, okay, I'll let it go. And so none of the other players know whether they just dropped out voluntarily or they don't have more money on that agent. At any rate, if the challenger wins, so it's the player being challenged, the player whose turn it is, drops out, then the action is cancelled, nothing happens, and the player's turn is over. If the challenger fails, they get a little bit of a punishment. They take their restricted marker and they hang it on their screen. That reminds them and all the other players that on their next turn, they may not activate an agent. On their next turn, they must make a payoff. So they sort of miss their turn. They spend a turn making a payoff. And again, the payoff could be 0 coins, you don't know. And once you do that, then you remove the restricted marker. So this marker is to say, next turn, you must make a payoff. Then it goes to the next player in clockwise order, who may challenge or not challenge. And in this way, players are kind of getting a sense of how much money each player may have paid off to which agents. And this is important because you need to know which agents you can trust. Each agent has a special ability. Because I've played the old version, I don't play with the special abilities, but you certainly can if you want. They're very simple. They always activate after a move. So in this case, if the move was successful, player would move Magician to Tunis, maybe with or without the briefcase, and then they may, but don't have to, activate their special ability, which is printed on the back of the player screen. Instead of moving an agent, you can also order an agent to assassinate someone else. And in the terminology of conspiracy, it's called burning. You're burning their cover. But anyway, it removes them from the board. And this is always a danger if players discover you have a lot of money sent to an agent. Because they could compete, they could try to send more money to that agent, but they could also assassinate that agent. And then your investment in that agent is gone for the rest of the game, not going to be of any use. So when you give an order to an agent, you can either get them to move, or you can get them to assassinate. But to assassinate, they must be in the same city as another agent at the start of the turn. You can declare as your action, I'm ordering Magician to assassinate Spyglass. And this can be challenged just like anyone else. Importantly, what matters is the payoff to the assassin. If you're ordering Magician to assassinate Spyglass, the payoff to Spyglass doesn't matter. You're not ordering Spyglass to do anything. You're ordering Magician to assassinate. But in order to give an agent an assassination order, you must have already given them 5 coins. This is a big ask, assassinating another agent. And this will actually burn some goodwill with the agent. If the assassination is successful, you will lose those 5 coins. They'll go back to the supply. But this action can be challenged just like any other. So the challenger may start with 6, for example, and again goes back and forth. The challenger, if they lose the challenge, again, they would put one of these on as sort of a punishment, but then other players later in clockwise order have the opportunity to challenge as well. But if the order is successful, that the player whose turn it is able to successfully fend off all challenges, then they take the 5 coins from that agent's picture, return it to the supply, and then remove this agent, the assassinated agent, from the board. And each player can take one of these burn markers and place them on their board to remind them that this agent is out of play. If you've given 10 coins to this agent, too bad. This agent is no longer in play. That money's not going to help you anymore. So it can be dangerous to have other players know that you've given a lot of money to a particular agent, because that agent will then be a target for assassination. After everybody has taken a turn, then if you're playing with Dr. Solomon, it'll be Dr. Solomon's turn, and you would simply move this die 1 space toward here. I'll take this opportunity to explain Dr. Solomon. Again, I don't personally play with Dr. Solomon, but it is in the rules for this game. Dr. Solomon adds a timer to the game. 20 rounds, that is 1 round around the table, or 15 rounds in a 2 or 3 player game. When you make a payoff to an agent, you can, instead of paying off one of these 6 agents, you can instead pay off Dr. Solomon. Unlike these agents, in which you can give any amount of money as your payoff, Dr. Solomon, you can only pay off 1 coin at a time. The game continues just as normal, but when this marker reaches 0, the game is still not over, but instead, every round, you would roll this die. And if it's blank, I think it's just 1 side is Dr. Solomon. If it's blank, the game continues. Place the die back on the 0 space. 1 more round passes, roll the die again. The game continues until either a briefcase gets moved into one of the players' headquarters, their own headquarters, at which point they win the game immediately, or the game ends immediately if at the end of a round, Dr. Solomon is rolled on the die. If that happens, then the winner is the player who paid the most money to Dr. Solomon. I think that's it. You're ready to play Conspiracy. This game is subtle, and it's pretty easy for a player to make some suboptimal plays early in the game that you don't realize are suboptimal until later in the game. With this style of game, what this game is trying to achieve, there's no real way around that. You're giving money to these agents. How much money? Which agents? Maybe you commit too much money early, and then late in the game, you get punished for that because players who waited and observed then were able to pitch in more money than you to take control of that agent. There is a learning curve to this game. I do worry that players are not going to play this multiple times. You're going to have a group that maybe is curious, plays the game once, at least one person kind of feels bummed about it afterwards because they ended up making some decisions early in the game, not really knowing what they're doing. It's fine, the game is wide open, right? Nobody knows what they're doing. If everybody's at the same experience level, then nobody knows what they're doing. And eventually somebody's going to win. Who cares, right? But some people, they're like, I made a mistake early and now I can't possibly win. And then they grumble for the rest of the game. And then you'll never get them to play that game ever again. But it's sad when that happens, because these games have depth. These are games that you return to, if you're able to return to it, especially with the same players. This is really a game where you're playing the players, not the game, right? What's not just important is what happens on the board, but the player personalities come out, right? Is this a player who kind of goes for the gusto early? Is this a person who holds back, waits and sees, right? It is a very unique experience. There aren't any other games like this that I can think of. I've actually had a hard time introducing Conspiracy to some people because the name makes them think it's like a social deduction, hidden role like game, like a Secret Hitler or The Resistance, that type of game. It's a secret agent game, but we're not the secret agents. In fact, we are not allowed to lie in this game at all. There's lots of opportunities for bluffing in this game. You're watching what other players do. And if one player tends to move an agent quite a bit, you may think they have a payoff of that agent. But it could be a misdirection. It's that type of game. You can misdirect other players. You can give them a different sense by game moves, but also body language. When the challenge comes up, a player tries to do something and you stop it and you bid. You're not really bidding, remember, it's not an auction, but you declare 1 and they say 2. Now you have 2 on that agent, so you can't declare an amount higher than 2, right? That would be lying. You only have 2. So you have to drop out. But how do you drop out? Do you say, I can't, go ahead? Or you could say, sure, you can do it. When you hear one or the other, what do you think? If I say, I can't, go ahead, I can't stop you, you're going to think, I don't have more money, but I could be bluffing. Or I think about it for a while and then let you do it, suggesting that I could have stopped you and I needed to think about whether to do so or not. And that can be a bluff. Like, that's a huge amount of tension too, right? Let's say you're challenging a move. You have a big payoff on an agent. Do you reveal that? Because if the other players see that you have a big payoff on an agent, that agent becomes a greater target for an assassination, and then your investment is wiped out. So you want to make big payoffs, but you don't want necessarily to reveal that until it becomes absolutely important, maybe by the end of the game. So those decisions about whether to reveal your bid or not, whether to stop a particular move or not, is this the moment when I make that reveal? Oh, very, very exciting game. So while the actual gameplay on the board feels very quiet, subdued, the conspiracy part comes in because you're watching the other players like a hawk, how they're reacting, and judging whether those reactions are genuine or not. Modern Euro fans probably not gonna like that. It uses skills other than resource management. I liked the original game. There were a few reasons I didn't play it very often. It is a long game. This one probably takes about 90 minutes, 60 to 90 minutes. One thing is the game can end quickly or it can drag out. If the game ends early, that's often because one player was able to sneak out the win and the other players didn't see the opportunity to stop them. This is actually more common in a 3-player game because you need 2 players working together to stop the third player from winning. It's actually easier if you have more players you're competing against because that's more players on your team to stop the person trying to win. So 4 players is best. 3 player is a little more likely that one player will sneak away with the win. Yes, the game can go long when everybody knows what they're doing. They're not committing too much money right away. They're holding back. They're judging to see what other people are doing. They're making small payoffs, right? They're doing things, see what gets challenged. I did a move, and then Barbara immediately said they wanted to pay off an agent. Or are they paying off the agent I just moved? Like something triggered it, did it? There's lots of these things to think about, and they're not typical game-related things. They're above-board things, if you will, right? Interactions with other players, observations. The game can go long when a lot of players know what they're doing, but when that happens, it's very, very tense. That's a level of tension that I rarely see in games, where it comes down to those last few turns. Now, the game can go long. When it goes long, it's tense, and I love that tension. But its length does keep me from playing it very often. I don't really play this version anymore. I do have this version now, which came out 2019, subtitled The Solomon Gambit, which is a nice callback to the designer, Dr. Eric Solomon. And Dr. Eric Solomon appears in the game as a off-board 7th agent, one of the changes they made to the game. Restoration Games, God bless them, they did almost everything right with this remake. And even the things which I don't think they did right, I understand why they did it. So they did an amazing job streamlining this. So a couple of examples, okay? This has 8 agents, and the board is entirely symmetrical. This game, 6 agents, very slightly smaller board, and it's a map. A symmetrical map is boring. At least now, it's only a tiny bit smaller, but it's no longer a symmetrical map, and I appreciate that. In this version, the challenges took a really long time, because if you played by the rules, what you would do is, so you want to challenge me, right? You would call out a number. All I have to do is match it. So you call out, well, this one would be like hundreds of dollars, right? You would call out $200, and I would say, yep, meaning I also have at least $200 on this agent. And then you increase, 300, 400, and all the time saying, yep, yep, yep. And it's really drags, right? So one thing they did was restoration was they made it play out a little bit more like an auction in that you always have to go higher than the previous number called out. So let's say you challenge me and you call out 2. I might have exactly 2. I can't say, yep, I matched it. I have to have a higher amount than you. It just makes that challenge go faster, which is appreciated. So they shrunk the time down. The original version had these stupid pun names. Like, look them up. They're just horrible. And also a bit of, national stereotype kind of identities for the agents. And this one, they kind of went a little bit more highbrow, I guess. And each agent has a special ability. Now, I normally don't like special abilities, and it's true, I don't play with them. The game works completely fine without special abilities. This game didn't have it. This game doesn't need it. The special powers are simple and generally easy to explain. And there aren't, questions raised about, well, when does this power take effect? No. The powers are simple, and they always take effect at the same time, which is after the agent's normal move. So even though I don't personally play with the special powers, I appreciate that they're there. They did an extremely good job with them. There are 2 changes they made which I don't agree with, but again, I understand why they did it. In the original, you would write down your payoffs to the agents in a bank book a little booklet. You use 1 page per game. And on this page, you would write down the payout to the agent. In the new edition, they went with gold coins, like John Wick coins, gold sovereigns, that you move on behind a screen, you move onto the picture of the agent that you're making the payoff to. In this game, it's easy to cheat by accident if you don't understand the rules. When you make a payoff to an agent, that's it. You're wiring money into their Swiss bank account, okay? You don't have that money anymore. It's gone. Writing in a booklet is a mechanism that reinforces that permanence. But when you have coins that you move around behind your screen, it's very easy if a player misunderstands and they think they can move coins around, right? The coin isn't gone. It's still behind your screen. You just moved it. Surely you can move it again. No. You cannot move a coin once you move it from your reserve. Once you move it out of your reserve, it's spent. This is more of a theoretical problem than an actual problem, but I like when game mechanisms reinforce things. If something in a game is permanent, a permanent change, have the mechanisms reflect that. The thing that you do feels permanent. The fact is, if somebody doesn't understand and they make a mistake, you can't catch it. The other change they made, which is something that I don't agree with, but I understand why they did it. So there is a 7th agent in the game that stays off the board, named Dr. Solomon. When you're making a payoff, you can pay off any number of coins to any agent on the board, or you can pay off 1 coin to Dr. Solomon. And there's a timer, 15 or 20 rounds based on number of players. And once that's 1 round fully around the table. And after that, you're rolling a die, 1 in 6 chance, the game ends. And if the game ends that way, the player who gave the most money to Dr. Solomon wins. So it's an alternate win condition. On paper, this is brilliant, because the timer will make the beginning of the game drag less. Really, it's the beginning of the game that drags, not the end, right? Maybe by the end, people are tired of it if the game has gone long, but it's the beginning when players are feeling each other out. Maybe some people find that boring, right? Especially if all the players are kind of, entering tentatively, slowly, right? So this puts a little pressure on them. And I generally like alternate win conditions, right? Things to keep in mind. I'm going to do this, but I have to keep this other thing in mind because maybe the game will end that way. I'm sure they play tested this a bunch, but my problem with it is that you lose the tension of knowing whether your payoff to an agent is enough. There's a different tension now added, right? I have a lot of payoff to an agent. The agent hasn't been assassinated. Can I execute my plan with that agent before Dr. Solomon ends the game? What makes the game special to me is the tension of moving agents, having big payoffs on agents, worrying about them getting assassinated, worrying about whether other players have beaten me in the amount of money that they've given to that same agent. So when push comes to shove and I'm trying to get that briefcase into my headquarters, that somebody doesn't immediately stop it because they had a bigger payout and I didn't realize. There's a lot of tension there, and that kind of gets lost in this new way. It becomes a little bit of a self-fulfilling thing. When you play tentatively, and there's nothing wrong with playing tentatively, you need time to observe what the other players are doing. And if players play tentatively and the round marker is getting closer and closer to when we start rolling that die, people will feel more pressure to pay off Dr. Solomon. So if more people start paying off Dr. Solomon, there's less action happening on the board, and it accelerates towards that ending. And it becomes more likely that that ending happens because players are spending their time making payments to Dr. Solomon instead of doing things on the board. So I actually don't like the Dr. Solomon change. I understand why they did it, and it allowed them to put a shorter time frame on the box. I don't play with that. Play with the special powers for the agents or not. I can take them or leave them. I don't, but I would recommend not playing with Dr. Solomon. If you play without Dr. Solomon and without the special powers, you are playing a much improved version of the original, and you will still see what makes the original great. It has all those elements. And special powers maybe add something to the experience for a modern hobbyist. Dr. Solomon, in my opinion, takes away a little bit from this experience. Makes it a different game, and maybe that game is better for you. It's those payoffs, it's the tension at the end where you're wondering if you can actually get your briefcase into that headquarters or not. You know, you feel that desperation. If you feel another player's about to win, can you and the other players work together to try to stop that from happening? Huge amount of tension there. A lovely tug of war. And this one only sacrifices it a little bit. But you can definitely play this in a way that is in every way an improvement over this one. Other than I might just add pieces of paper to this to write the payoffs. And you don't need a screen in that case. Look, when you've played as many games as I have, when you've been in the hobby as long as I have, you don't want yet another Euro. You want a different experience. You want unique games. Games that bring something different, something special. A different form of excitement, different form of tension. Maybe it exercises some different gaming muscles. It still has a strategy, but it's not all about converting 3 blue cubes into 1 green meeple, right? It's about reading other players. It's about bluffing. It's about making educated guesses. And it's about the push and pull of the action happening on the board and how you can influence it indirectly. I really enjoy Conspiracy for the unique experience it creates and the feelings it creates that aren't quite like any other game in my collection. And certainly, if I can choose between the old and the new, I'm going to choose the new. I love almost everything about the new, and it's easy enough to tweak, so I can play it more like the old, just my personal preference. Hey, thanks for watching. Remember, older games like Conspiracy don't stop being good just because newer games come out, right? Right. All right, take care.